afternoon. It's Wednesday, November 30th. I'm Aryeh O'Sullivan, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Israel has allegedly conducted a number of airstrikes inside Syria overnight, targeting a Hezbollah arms convoy traveling on a highway between Beirut and Damascus and a Syrian army depot near the Syrian capital. More in this report from IBA's Marko Dudkevich.
The explosions came shortly after midnight. According to the London-based newspaper Rai Al-Yom, the strike was in the Damascus area, and Israeli fighter jets allegedly fired 4 missiles at the 2 targets. Syria's official Sana news agency later confirmed the reports, saying there were no casualties. While Israel's standing policy is neither to confirm nor deny such reports, earlier this year, in a rare admission, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu revealed the Jewish state had carried out a number of strikes on Hezbollah targets to prevent the Shiite organization from obtaining so-called game-changing weapons. Since the start of the civil war in Syria over 5 years ago, Hezbollah has deployed thousands of its fighters and weapons inside Syria in a bid to strengthen the Assad regime and assist it to regain control of rebel-held areas. It has also stockpiled rockets and weapons it has received from Syria and Iran, including long-distance missiles, which Israel is reportedly trying to keep out of their hands. Marko Dudkevich, IBA News.
Cabinet ministers decided to postpone voting on the contentious regulations bill, known as the Omona law, till next Monday. This after the Knesset's Constitution, Law and Justice Committee today approved a preliminary reading of the proposed legislation, paving the way for the first of 3 readings in the plenum. 8 Knesset members voted in favor and 6 against. The committee approved 2 different versions of the bill, one that circumvents the recent ruling by the High Court of Justice that calls for the evacuation of some 40 families from the outpost built on private Palestinian land by December 25th, and the other version that does not. The votes are being held despite its opposition by Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit, who warned the government that such a bill violates international law. Mandelblit offered a compromise whereby the 40 families living in Omona temporarily be moved to a new site on Palestinian land held in the custody of the state, located nearby. The Shin Bet Security Service has arrested a Palestinian man from the village of Katana in the Jerusalem hills suspected of throwing a firebomb that ignited a devastating fire in the nearby village of Nataf. An investigation revealed that the fire was definitely caused by a firebomb. Investigators from Jerusalem's Fire and Rescue Service said the remains of other firebombs were found in the area, including one located near the village's perimeter security fence. In a related development, Finance Minister Moshe Kahlon and his deputy met today with the owners and managers of their country's insurance companies to discuss compensation to those citizens whose homes were destroyed or damaged in the wave of fires. At the start of the meeting, Kahlon said that appraisers and representatives of the tax authority have already contacted most of those residents. The Jerusalem District Court today handed down a 16-year jail sentence to Mohammed Badar, a Palestinian terrorist who stabbed and lightly wounded an ultra-Orthodox man in the capital earlier this year. As part of a plea bargain, Badar admitted to his crime and was convicted for attempted murder, possession of a knife, and illegally residing in Israel. The court also ordered Badar to pay the victim 80,000 shekels. On May 16th, Badar sneaked into Israel and spotted the man sitting with his wife and children and attacked him, lightly injuring him in the chest. He was arrested by police as he fled the scene. Israel and Guatemala have signed an agreement of cooperation in a bid to strengthen bilateral ties in a number of fields, including water, agriculture, technology, medicine, and tourism. At a joint press conference in Jerusalem's Guatemala President Jimmy Morales, who arrived in the country earlier this week with his wife and 4 cabinet ministers, invited Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to visit Guatemala. Morales stressed Jerusalem and Guatemala City can work together and bring about significant changes.
I think there is a larger picture that I began speaking to you about, and that is our interest in entering in a big way Latin America. Latin America has always been friendly to Israel, but I think we're in a position where these relationships can be far, far, far advanced. And I look forward to visiting Latin America and perhaps Guatemala, since you just kindly gave me an invitation.
Interior Minister Aryeh Deri announced today that all Israeli citizens will soon receive smart biometric identity cards. The new biometric database will be mandatory for all citizens beginning next year. Anyone who applies for an identity document, an ID card, or a passport will receive a biometric one. The database will include a face photograph and 2 fingerprints. The decision comes after Deri reviewed the trial period, which began 3 years ago, and is based on recommendations given by the special committee, which concluded there is a great security need for creating a biometric database. Deri stressed that the plan is the most balanced method to safeguard one's privacy and state's duty to secure its citizens from identity theft. After nearly 3 months of house arrest, Netanyahu Mayor Miriam Firebomb, suspected of accepting millions of shekels in bribes in exchange for advancing a series of real estate projects in the coastal city, today returned to City Hall. Firebomb was barred from entering the municipality building since her arrest in mid-September. She was permitted to do so today on condition that she refrained from making any contacts with anyone involved in the corruption affair. In addition, she is barred from interfering in any business concerning planning, building, or development in Netanya. Since the start of the investigation, Firebomb has adamantly denied all charges of wrongdoing. Proposals to integrate women into the IDF combat units are being resisted by high-profile religious Zionist rabbis who are calling on the Army Chief of Staff to reverse the decision. At a conference in Jerusalem yesterday, the rabbis insisted the proposal for women in tank brigades constitute a red line, arguing that service alongside women would force religiously observant soldiers to act against their conscience. Rabbi Shmuel Sternberg called the decision immoral, saying a woman's role is to be a mother, not a combat soldier. And Rabbi Eliakim Levanon declared this was a war, asking rhetorically, who runs the world, the Almighty or the Supreme Court and radical left-wing groups? The rabbis now intend to enlist the support of the chief rabbis of Israel in reversing the army's plans. Lone soldiers might soon be paid a monthly stipend of 1,000 shekels for the first year after their discharge if a bill approved by the Ministry Committee for Legislation receives Knesset approval. The bill represents a multi-partisan effort, co-sponsored by MKs from Yisrael Beitenu and the Zionist Union, and backed by Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman. The bill is intended to help lone soldiers, who are usually immigrants or Israelis whose families have moved abroad, find their feet in Israel after finishing military service, making it easier for them to settle down and stay in the country. The Jewish people are undergoing a period of radical change with regards to perspectives on Jewish identity and require an open dialogue on how to strengthen the sense of Jewish peoplehood. That's according to a landmark new study by the Jewish People Policy Institute. More details from IBA's Elon Astan-Levy.
The Jewish world today spans 2 spheres, Israel and an American-dominated diaspora, and they don't exactly see eye to eye.
There are 2 completely different societies. The main interest in Israel is to keep a unified society. We don't want to have different tribes. We want that the kids of each one will be able to marry the kids of the other. So that's different than abroad. Abroad, there are 3 main streams, and there is coexistence between them, but there are differences, and the society is more open.
The study is based on a wide-scale structured dialogue with Jewish communities over the world, with 49 seminars from Sydney to Sao Paulo, led by senior JPPI researchers Shmuel Rosner and John Ruskay. The report finds that perceptions of Jewish identity are in flux, becoming increasingly more fluid and individualist and far less institutionalized. Jews are now considerably more likely to consider culture and peoplehood to be primary components of Judaism than genealogy and religion. The value of mutual Jewish responsibility is at the forefront of many Jews' identity as Jews, as is the value of tikkun olam, far more than adherence to Jewish law or Jewish study. But at the same time, there are clear gulfs both between Israel and the American-centered diaspora and between the Orthodox and non-Orthodox worlds. Orthodox Jews are, unsurprisingly, much more likely to believe that being Jewish is mainly a matter of religion, and all the more so in Israel, where Jews have more old-fashioned conceptions of Jewishness. And Israeli Jews are much more likely than their diaspora brethren to agree that the state has a place in determining one's Jewishness, while disputing the validity of conversions by conservative and reform rabbis. 30% of Jews reportedly believe self-definition should determine who is Jewish, rather than rabbis or Israel. At the same time, a majority of American Jews agree intermarriage could be a blessing for the future of Judaism. But their Israeli Jewish brethren beg to differ quite sharply. As such, as Jewish identity in the diaspora becomes more diffuse and rates of intermarriage rise, the report argues Israel might need to reconsider the law of return.
The law of return in Israel is based on the grandparent, one of the grandparents. Today you have grandparents who have grandkids Jewish, but they are not Jewish. What you do with the grandparents? Let's say, for example, that the Clintons are so frustrated with the results of the elections that they will think of relocation. Their daughter and their son-in-law and their granddaughters will decide to relocate in Israel. They will be allowed to live here or not.
The report does not urge the government to make any drastic immediate changes, but sends a warning signal that the Jewish world is changing rapidly. If the Israel-diaspora relationship is to strengthen, both spheres will have to discuss how to play to their strengths, find common ground, and cultivate that sense of peoplehood in a changing world. Elon Astan-Levy for IBA News.
This week, the government decided to expand the procurement of F-35 fighter jets with 17 more aircraft. This will bring a total of 50 of the advanced jet fighter to Israel to the Air Force. Well, joining us now from our Tel Aviv studio is Danny Grossman, a lieutenant colonel in the reserves and a former IAF aviator. Hi, Danny.
Hi, Aryeh. Glad to be here.
Well, Danny, the first of the F-35 stealth warplanes are expected to land in Israel in just 10 more days. What is this aircraft going to give to the IAF?
Well, the F-35 is the first fifth-generation fighter in the history of the Israeli Air Force. Now, fifth generation means that the airplane will have stealth, which means you can't see it, as well as tremendous maneuverability and combat capability. The world had had fourth generation, such as the F-117 fighter, but that had stealth, but it wasn't really a good fighter. It couldn't fight its way in and fight its way out. It could fight at night when all you could pick it up was on radar. But the F-35 will be able to do both long-range missions and short-range missions. It'll be able to operate in both stealth mode and in regular mode. And it will increase Israel's capability by, number one, keeping the skies over Israel clear, and secondly, providing us with both a strategic and a tactical weapon, which we have not had anything even close to this in the past.
Well, Danny, the F-35 is called in Hebrew Adir, or magnificent. Now, Israel has a tradition of modifying the aircraft with local Israeli-made additions. Is that possible with this F-35?
Absolutely. First of all, the Adir comes from the phrase Adir Bamrumim, for those of you who are religious. And the F-35 will have the ability to take into the aircraft various Israeli innovations. So it will be an outstanding fighter. It'll also have the cutting-edge technology in the world. There is nothing even close to the F-35, which is fighting. There are 2 operational squadrons already flying in the United States. So Israel will be the first country outside the United States which will be operational. Now, this is very, very important because Israel had been, during the Cold War with the Soviet Union, the beta site to test Western equipment opposite the Soviet. Well, now what we're doing is we're going to see, and if you remember, by the way, then the F-15, the first air-to-air combat, which the F-15 saw, was right here in Israel in the mid-'70s, and the first air-to-air kills were here in Israel. And similarly, the F-16 arrived in Israel just a few months before it took part in the famous mission to bomb the reactor in Osirak. So Israel actually showed the world how to operate these systems, the F-15 and F-16, and I have no doubt that Israel will be making a major contribution within the strategic cooperation with the United States by being really the cutting edge of showing how to operate this new fighter, which is cutting-edge technology itself.
Well, you know, Danny, Lockheed Martin is getting a PR campaign of epic proportions in Israel. Danny, is this the right aircraft to begin with?
Absolutely. This is the best fighter anywhere available. And Israel, one of the most important tenets of the Israeli philosophy, our defense philosophy, is that we need to maintain a qualitative edge. This will enable us to do that. The F-35, think of it as the quantum leap which Israel had when they first got the F-15s. It took a quantum leap in our capability. And similarly, we hope that this will happen exactly with the F-35 procurement.
Now, there have been reports in addition to the F-35s that are coming, senior Air Force officers are interested in future purchases of more jets, and they're saying maybe the F-15 is one of these future purchases. Is this beyond the lifespan of that jet?
Well, no, the F-15, remember, we're not talking about the F-15s, the original models, which we got in the mid-'70s. The second version, which the Israel got, was close to what the Americans call the F-15E. We call it the F-15I, which was delivered in 1998. And that was also a much more versatile fighter. The original F-15s were only basically an air-to-air machine. Israel, by the way, like I mentioned, Israeli innovation, we added air-to-ground capability, but the F-15I was built from the get-go with both air-to-air and air-to-ground capability. Similarly so, the F-35 will be able to do air-to-air and air-to-ground, and the other F-15s and F-16s, which Israel will keep in the mix of our manned aircraft, will help do the job for Israel. You're going to always need a mix of different types of aircraft to go alongside and complement the F-35 fleet.
Well, Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Danny Grossman, an aviator in the Israeli Air Force, thanks for joining IBA News.
Thank you very much, Arya. Have a good day.
The EU delegation to Israel hosted the first Arab-Haredi Business Cooperation Conference yesterday, matchmaking between leaders from both growing communities. Among participants were Yafa Deri, wife of Interior Minister Aryeh Deri, and Ayman Saif, head of the Economic Development Authority for Minorities in the Prime Minister's office. The panel discussions centered on special questions facing both communities alike, including the integration of women into the workforce.
It's my sincere hope that today's conference will be the first step not only in forging links between Arab and Haredi businesses, but also in fostering better understanding between the Arab and Haredi communities in general. Two communities that rarely communicate with each other, yet might have more interest in common than first meets the eye.
Thousands of Ethiopian Israelis from across the country made their way to the Omona Promenade in the capital to celebrate the annual Sigid holiday. The holiday, which is marked 50 days after Yom Kippur, symbolizes the longing of the Ethiopian Jewish community for Zion, their connection to Jerusalem, and their commitment to Jewish unity. A number of Kesim, or spiritual leaders from the Ethiopian Israeli community, presided over the event. In his address, President Reuven Rivlin mentioned Arve Mengistu, the Israeli citizen of Ethiopian descent who has been held captive by Hamas for over 2 years, and stressed that the state of Israel is continuously working to bring about his release. Following afternoon prayers and the blowing of the shofar, participants ended the holiday with a festive meal. In honor of the Sigid holiday, the Ministry of Science and Technology today announced it was allocating 1,800,000 shekels to provide scholarships to immigrants from Ethiopia. Minister Ofer Akinis said this is part of another attempt to minimize the social gaps in Israel's society while providing new immigrants from Ethiopia a fair chance to succeed. In financial news, share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange were down, while the shekel was mixed in foreign currency trading. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. Winter is finally here. The forecast is calling for rain showers and thunderstorms that are slated to hit the country, mainly in the north and along the coast. In the south, strong southerly-westerly winds are accompanied by sandstorms are expected to be there, and flood warnings are for the coastal plain. Rain will spread to the center of the country by the afternoon, and temperatures will drop. Here are the expected highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. That's all for our broadcast. Please join us again tomorrow when Elon Aslan Levy will be here to bring you the latest news from Israel. Till then, I'm Ariel Sullivan, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.